Are you still getting triggered after spiritual awakening? If so, let's talk about why this is happening and how you can cure it. I used to think after my awakening, when I realized I'm not the separate self, there is only this everything, and I am that, I'm literally just awareness. I had this misguided belief that I would live this perfect life and become this perfect body-mind, almost like Gandhi or Mother Teresa or some saintly type behavior, where I wouldn't snap at anything and I would never get angry again. Of course, I was quickly brought back down to earth with the reality that that wasn't the case. The reason this crops up again and again initially is really because it's just a remnant of what you used to believe. It's an old habit that takes time to fall away. What I found is that initially I would keep snapping at certain things, maybe whether it was my kids or maybe my dog would do something he wasn't supposed to do, and I would snap, and then I would really relent that heavily and regret it and almost beat myself up mentally. Oh, why did you do that? You know you're not a separate self. Why are you trying to defend yourself? Why did that offend you? Why did I let that affect me so deeply when I am merely the awareness in which everything occurs? And I used to go around in this cycle, and I got stuck in this cycle for several months, in a cycle of self-judgment where you feel you've taken a step back from the separate self, but you're still observing and almost judging. And it becomes this very difficult phase of observing your own behaviors, observing your own thoughts, but simultaneously making judgments on them about what is the so-called right thing to do and what is the so-called wrong thing to do. And I found myself making judgments against myself. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have reacted in that way. Why am I doing this? Maybe my awakening or my realization is not real after all. Maybe I've just made all of this up and it's all in my mind. Maybe I've assumed this as the ego. And this phase went on for several months, and it was exhausting because I was constantly flipping backwards and forwards between a state of awareness and realization of my true nature, but then being dragged back into the human form. And it felt like there was the me over here that knew reality, that knew truth, that had this realization and awakening. And there was everyone else and everything else out there still that could somehow disturb that. And to a certain extent, it felt like I'd not really moved forward. I just was able to kind of use this state of awareness, if you like, as an escape from reality, but it hadn't yet become my reality. It hadn't the two hadn't merged. They'd not found a home with each other. So during this time, as I say, it was very exhausting and tiring. After that, I then entered a phase where it's kind of like absolutism, where you say, well, at an absolute level, I'm not a separate individual. There is nothing actually happening because there's only one thing, this everything. And because the perceived happenings are all occurring within this one everything, there's not actually anything happening. And I use this as an excuse to kind of excuse my behavior. Oh, it doesn't matter that this is arising. It's just a result of the Big Bang. You know, the Big Bang was 18 million years ago or whatever, and everything that's happened as a result since then is a direct result of that, including me getting angry at the dog, or, you know, whatever, getting frustrated or having an occasional outburst. I'd say, well, that's just how it is. So I then left a phase, and you may find yourself in either of these phases where initially you feel like you've not moved forward at all with your spiritual awakening. Then you kind of take this absolute stance where, oh, everything's totally okay. And you use it kind of as an excuse, as certainly I did back then, to say, oh, well, it's all okay. I embrace all of it. I embrace my own frailties. I embrace the outbursts. But really, as I've matured in my awakening over the many years, I've kind of come to realize that there really are no excuses. It's a balance, right? It's not that you're going to ever be a perfect body mind. You're not aspiring, well, you may initially aspire to be a saintly type person, but it's not realistic. it's not real. At the other end of the spectrum, there's the just, oh, well, just let the body mind do whatever it wants. It doesn't matter. That's the absolute stance. And again, that's not right either. Really, we have kind of two things that we owe ourselves to live to. One is a duty. We have a duty as human beings. And despite whatever level of spiritual awakening you've had, whether you've seen through the separate self, whether the ego has fallen away, whether you feel everything is just this oneness, including you, there's no separation, there is still a body mind here. It's not here. It's as an individual separate entity, it is illusory. Okay, it's not separate to everything, but it does still exist as part of the everything. It's not separate, but it does still exist. So it has to be dealt with. We can't just leave it and let it just do whatever goes on and just say, oh, that's totally fine. Okay, nor can we try and put it on a pedestal and say, oh, it must behave in this saintly manner. So you have this duty, to a sacred duty, to look after yourself, look after your family, look after your physical well-being, your mental well-being, look after any relatives or loved ones that you have, and contribute in some way to other people and to the world. That's a duty. And many people will fall victim to not doing this. And I did this as well during the early stages of awakening, where I thought, well, the whole bottom fell out of my world. I was like, well, what am I supposed to do now? There's not really any purpose. I don't have to do any of this. I'm not really in control of it. This body mind is not driving everything. It's just part of the everything. Everything is all there is, and it is that. So why try to do things? Why act in a certain way? Why react in a certain way at all? But you have this sacred duty to look after your body, your mind, and so on, other people, relatives, loved ones, and the world. So that's one aspect that we act from. So that can then shape and inform your decisions and your reactions. The second concept that you need to move in the world from, and the way that you act, is not duty, but it's devotion, which is just another way of saying love. So it's a devotion to the truth that you know, the truth that you've experienced. If you've had an awakening where you know with certainty you are not a separate self, there is no illusory separate self, and that there is only this everything, and you are awareness or consciousness or God or whatever you wish to call that language-wise, doesn't matter. The language is never 100% accurate description of what it is. But if you've seen that, you owe it to that self and to everything within that self, i.e. everything else. You owe it to them through love to demonstrate and live from that truth. So that means that can inform how you move in the world and how you react to and interact with other so-called people. Once you get to this stage, you now have some kind of compass, because what I found is directly after awakening, prior to awakening, you kind of go into this, you're a separate person. I'm going to find awakening. I'm going to get awakened. I'm going to discover enlightenment. It's going to be amazing. It's going to make me a better person. I'm going to be filled with bliss at all times. And you think you're following signposts to head in the right direction. You think you're going to get to some kind of goal, some finish line, right? But really, in the most real sense, awakening is just the destruction of the person that started the journey, the destruction of all the signposts, the path disappears, the traveler disappears, and you're just kind of left where you started, but the person is no longer there, okay? Or the idea of the person. Obviously, the body mind is still present, but the idea of that person being a separate entity is no longer there. So when I kind of entered that stage, it was very disorientating. And I didn't have a compass at that point. I didn't have a direction. Well, what am I supposed to do with this? Why do I get up in the morning? I don't long anymore for physical things or monetary things or financial things or objects or relationships or experiences. It's not driving me because I know that's not going to fulfill me. I've already tried all that. That's why I got into spirituality in the first place. That's why I started the journey. So I was left directionless. And if you don't have a direction to steer your decisions and steer your actions, you just end up drifting. Now, this can be a fairly pleasant experience up until a certain time, And many people get stuck there, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But you need to be truthful to yourself. You need to be very honest as part of your awakening process and look deeply at your experience and what you feel in your heart has happened or has not happened. Some people ask me, how do I know an awakening is real? How do I know this spiritual awakening is real? Only you can know that. If you feel it 100%, you will know. You will know. If you feel you're kind of kidding yourself, then you're kidding yourself. Okay, only you will know that. But without that compass initially, you have nothing to steer you. And that's why these two kind of steering factors of having a duty, remembering you do have a duty to yourself and others, and remembering that you also have that devotion, which you have to devote yourself to expressing the love of truth. You have to express and live from the deepest truth that you know, that you've experienced. And that then shapes your decisions and your movement in the world. This doesn't mean you won't get triggered. Okay? It doesn't mean you won't still get triggered, but it happens less and less. Because what tends to happen is initially after awakening, you react sometimes even worse than before. Because you're observing things. You're very kind of almost like the guard has been lifted. You have no protection anymore. You're not putting any walls up. So you'll see things differently. Quite often your perceptions get heightened. I remember after awakening for myself, I was walking the dog. I could hear my dog's footsteps on the grass, which I'd never, ever heard before. Now, I'm sure they were taking place before, but I'd never ever heard them before because I wasn't living in this kind of state of awareness and being awareness. So your perceptions are heightened. You'll see things you've never seen, hear things you've never heard. And as a result of that, things that used to trigger you a little bit initially after awakening can trigger you even more. And it really can undermine you and trap you because you think, you feel sometimes that it undoes your realization, or it turns back that awakening. Oh no, this is not right. I'm so angry. I've never been this angry. I've never reacted in this way. I've never been this triggered. But that's really just because the filters of your perception have been removed, and it can hit you even harder than before. So that's what happened to me initially, was that the reactions were even worse than they used to be. But then over time, you just keep bringing yourself back to awareness. You keep recalling and remembering your true nature. Now, it's not really a practice or an action because you are always that, right? You're aware now of these words. You're aware of the sensations of the seat, of the clothes gently touching your skin, of your breath coming in and out of your body, right? You're aware all the time. So you can't really take an action to rest in awareness or to be awareness. It's merely a remembrance and a remembering of that, particularly during times of being triggered. So what ends up happening is over time, initially when you kind of, just post-awakening, these triggering episodes can last a long time. Okay, they're very, very severe, and they lead to, as I described, this cycle of thought, back and forth. I shouldn't have done that. What could I do? Is this right? Am I not awakened? Has something gone wrong? And so on. It can lead to a long time. And even a small incident, even though it's not big in the grand scale of things, can spread over hours or sometimes days. But over time, when you see these things arising and you feel that emotion in you, you're like, okay, that's not strictly in me. I'm observing that. It's arising within awareness, because obviously awareness is everything, and everything arises into awareness and from awareness and is observed by awareness. It's literally awareness, you observing itself. So there comes a time when this emotion is felt, but there's a degree of separation. This is triggering the old separate identity. But you can look at that from different ways, and you can say, well, really, that sense of hurt, is that a real thing? Like, who is actually hurt at this point? The identity, the old me, is just a story. It's just a collection of memories, stories, and labels and language that you've crumpled together over time and said, that's me, that's John Smith. Right? So you can investigate the nature of the I who feels hurt, or you can flip it around and you can investigate the nature of the emotion. what is this hurt? Close your eyes. What is being perceived right now? Is there any substance to this hurt? Is it tangible? Well, no, it's not tangible. Does it have a shape? No. So you can investigate these things. And initially, this does become a little bit of an exercise when you get triggered in this way, that you can either investigate the emotion itself, which lessens it because you realize there's nothing tangible to it and it's just illusory and it's not you, or you can investigate the I who feels affected or hurt by that. And again, you'll come to the same conclusion, whether you go out the way to the emotion or in the way to the I, you'll come to the same conclusion that there's not really anything there. So reacting and being triggered by it makes no sense. It's a waste of time and energy. Now, I went through a period initially where I kind of got this wrong, and I was trying to make decisions and not get triggered because I wanted to be a better person. Like, I wanted to appear spiritual. I wanted to appear saintly. And as I said, if I got that wrong, if I was triggered, I would come down on myself hard mentally. But really, that's the wrong way to do it. If you're feeling you have to react in a certain way, you're kind of missing the point. Now, what I realize is that these things are going to happen. And it's not your fault. It's just an old residue of the body mind. Depending on what stage of life you're in, this kind of process of being triggered by this separate identity that you have now let fall away may have been going on for decades. So to just expect that overnight, the mind, which is not you, and the body, which is not you, is somehow going to stop reacting in the way that it used to react is not realistic, okay? But over time, these episodes shrink in duration and they shrink in volume. They shrink in the frequency that they actually occur. They will still occur. You're not striving for perfection here. But now, as something rises up, I'm aware of it. There's a triggering event and there's maybe a triggering reaction, but almost as soon as the reaction is felt, it's recognized as unreal. It's recognized, well, it's not important. It doesn't go further. It doesn't lead to knots in the stomach. It doesn't lead to, answering back. If somebody says something, inverted commas, hurtful to the, inverted commas, me, in the past, I would fire something back. It's how human beings react typically, is we fire back to try and defend the identity. But now it's almost like it's absorbed. It's not rejected and it's not buried down. We don't stuff it down and say, and try and swallow it like heartburn. It's just absorbed. It's recognized for what it is. Okay, well, that's just how this body mind is triggered and been reacted to this. I choose to not reply because that's just going to further things on. Again, it's not because I feel I should do that. It's just because that is the best thing to do. It's now become the natural response. And it's the outcome which leads to the least disturbance of the peace that I am. Because you are ultimately, underneath all of this, you're just peace. Some people say it's happiness or love. If you remove the separate identity, there's just peace. There's this ambivalent benevolence, right? Now ambivalent typically means that somebody doesn't care, but I mean that in the way that it's benevolent. So it's loving and it's good-natured regardless. Awareness, right? Awareness doesn't shirk from a negative experience. It doesn't get drawn to a positive experience. It's just always lovingly embracing what is. And that's what you are. That is your nature. Thoughts block that and emotions block that. So it's not that some experience or event is going to trigger that peace or happiness. It's the opposite. It's always there, but thoughts yearning for something else or rejecting the present moment is what obscures the peace that you always are. So knowing how to deal with these triggering moments can really help you. And just be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. They're always going to happen, but they will happen less and less over time. They'll happen for a shorter period of time. And the easiest way to deal with them is just to recognize them. Take that step back as the witness. Wasn't this interesting? I'm still feeling this anger, but don't get drawn into it. Okay? Take the seat back as the witness, as awareness. Observe what's happening. And if you want to investigate further and do that self-inquiry, who is it that feels the anger? Where is this I that feels offended? Can I put my finger on it? Is it tangible? Is there any reality to that I beyond a story and an identity and a name? Is there? Or the emotion, is there any substance to that emotion? So those two steps can really help you lessen the impact of these triggering events and over time lessen the frequency that they occur as well. I hope this has helped you.